They've been telling us for years and years and years the greatest geopolitical threat is, of course, not Russia. It's not Al-Qaeda. It's not ISIS. It's not Iran. It's not China. It's not North Korea. No, no, no. It's the climate. The climate is the greatest existential threat that we face in our society today. So doesn't it make sense that in the middle of a crisis, he's focusing on climate issues? It's completely consistent. Now, it also shows how dumb the point was earlier when he was saying it was the largest threat. Sure, that's possible to take that from his idiotic comments. But it's consistent. He's consistently wrong, and at least you can say that about him. Now, what could we do here? We have a situation where we have, we got a couple options here. We could go to Vladimir Putin and say, please control our global temperatures. We could try that. Or when there's a big problem with one of the largest energy producers in the world who's decided to just go over somebody's border and start killing people, there could be a disruption to our energy markets, and we need to deal with that. We could deal with it by asking Vladimir Putin to help us with the climate, or we could go down the road of maximizing and max producing our own energy resources. We've got them. We could do something about that. Tom Cotton noticed that maybe we could do something about that. Here's what he had to say.
Joe Biden's reckless energy policies have already driven up the price of oil and gas over the last year. So even he and his administration is admitting they don't want to impose oil and gas sanctions on Russia because they're afraid it's going to add to the inflation they've already created. Well, how about we impose those sanctions, but we lift all those restrictions on the production of American oil and gas so we can start drilling on federal lands again and putting out new leases. So we can reopen the Keystone Pipeline, which would bring more oil into America every day from Canada than we import every day from Russia. That's what we should be doing.
Gee, you think? I mean, if we're going to be using the climate point, doesn't even make any sense. We're going to be using the gas and the fuel anyway. Why not get it from this side of the world instead of that side? But it doesn't matter to these people. I mean, Mark Andreessen, the investor, came out and said, hey, maybe we should think about building 1,000 nuclear power plants around the world right now, so that this stuff doesn't happen anymore. We don't have to depend on places like Russia. Places can depend with clean energy on their own resources. Maybe we could do something like that. Are we going to do that? Of course not. In fact, Florida is now rescinding a license extension for a Florida nuclear plant. Countries all over Europe have been cutting back on their nuclear energy over the past few years. It's just everybody's going the wrong direction. They're all walking the wrong way down a one-way street. So let's look back, because it's not just the climate stuff that's been a catastrophe when it comes to Biden. How did we get here with all this? Remember, Donald Trump took a lot of criticism. He said this. He said, I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany. We're protecting France. We're protecting all of these countries. And then numerous of these countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia when they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. Germany is totally controlled by Russia because they will be getting 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia and a new pipeline. And you tell me if that's appropriate, because I think it's not. And I think it's a very bad thing for NATO, and I don't think it should have happened. We know that particular pipeline he was talking about has finally, after all of this time, been shut down by Germany, which is good. But Europe is continuing to buy natural gas from Russia. And I don't mean in the future. I mean right now, today. They're buying more gas from Russia today than they did last week. We are buying more oil from Russia today than we did last week. That's still happening. How is that possible? How is it possible? Biden, of course, waived sanctions on a Russian gas pipeline company. This is back from May 2021. Biden under fire from Congress for waiving sanctions on Russian gas pipeline company. Let's give you these headlines. U.S. urges Ukraine to stay quiet on Russian pipeline. This is from July of 2021. Here's the thing. Ukraine was like, hey, guys, don't give Russia any more power. You see what they're doing. They've already taken over chunks of land from us. They went into Georgia. They went into Crimea. And they're going to come here, too. You can't keep giving them more and more money so they can pad their own coffers. And Joe Biden said, you know what you should do? Shut up. That was in July of last year. Trump was slammed for cozying up to Putin, but Biden handled him a greater gift by waiving sanctions on a gas pipeline that could destabilize Europe. Flashback. Does anybody remember this stuff? How about flashback to Hunter Biden receiving $3.5 million in a wire transfer from a Russian billionaire? Corruption. We've been talking about it for a very long time, and we've gone into a lot of detail. Read Peter Schweizer's book if you want to learn about that a little bit. Hillary Clinton sided with Russia on sanctions as Bill made her gropey husband made $500,000 on a Moscow speech. All of this went down right around the same time. This has been a deep area of corruption for a long time among the left, and all of these little bits and pieces of information have added up to a period where sanctions can't work. They can't work on Vladimir Putin because he's been able to put away tens of billions of dollars into slush funds that can supply his own wants and needs, and that can go after, that can supply the wants and needs of his oligarchs, which is really the only way to take him down probably in the country. Though if this war continues to go the way it is, it's possible his people will eventually rise up. So what are these sanctions even supposed to do? You know who, you might think you know, but you know who doesn't know? The White House. They have absolutely no idea what these sanctions are supposed to do. Let me give you a little bit of evidence there.
And number two, no one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening.
No one did.
The purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence.
Oh, no one expected them to deter anyone, but of course they were designed for deterrence. This is what we're dealing with in the White House right now. Now, there's late breaking news that Putin is supposed to be sanctioned or will be sanctioned soon. But think about that statement. The war's already started. In theory, Vladimir Putin is just as likely as he was 2 weeks ago to be sitting next to you at a blackjack table at Caesars in Vegas. There's no sanctions against this guy until today. Really? We couldn't come up with that one? This guy can go wherever he wants? He can spend as he pleases? He has access to all of his resources as normal? How is that possible? It's just the grave incompetence we've seen from this administration on every issue. But this one, just another shining example. This came out today from the New York Times. The U.S. met with China over 3 months to present intelligence showing Russia's troop buildup near Ukraine and to urge Beijing to help avert a war. This is according to U.S. officials. Chinese officials rebuffed the U.S. and then shared the information with Moscow. They're just like, hey, that's interesting. First of all, we're not going to do anything. And second of all, thanks for the info. I'm going to transmit it to Vladimir. They thought that was going to work. They thought the country that has still, to this day, not given us the information we need to know about the pandemic, that they let spread all over the world, that they were going to be helpful with us to stop a war with Russia. Did you really think so? Did you really think that was going to work? Did you? Because, I mean, I don't even know what to think about you if you did. And, of course, this comes from the administration that oversaw Taliban Joe, the administration that oversaw the downfall of Afghanistan, probably the greatest bit of incompetence we've ever seen from a U.S. president. I don't know that that's overstating it. It was one of the most embarrassing things I have ever seen personally. Well, in case you were wondering how things were going, about 95% of the country is starving now. All of our allies and still plenty of our citizens are stuck there. It's a complete catastrophe and meltdown, but they did have time to release a statement about the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Quote, "The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is closely monitoring the situation in Ukraine and expresses concern about real possibility of civilian casualties." I mean, I swear this is real. The Islamic Emirate calls for restraint by both parties. All sides need to desist from taking positions that could intensify violence because, you know, the Taliban hates violence. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, in line with its foreign policy of neutrality, calls on both sides of the conflict to resolve the crisis through dialogue and peaceful means. The Islamic Emirate also calls on parties to the conflict to pay attention to safeguarding the lives of Afghan students and migrants in Ukraine. TalibanJoeMerch.com. Get yours today before we all get ours. What was required here for all of this to happen was a perfect storm, a 25-car pileup at the intersection of weakness and incompetence. Is Joe Biden to blame for this conflict? Well, primarily Vladimir Putin is the one to blame. If there's a rash of carjackings in a city, the people primarily to blame are the carjackers. But if the mayor has defunded the police, he's created a climate that makes the crime all that much more likely. Joe Biden exudes weakness. He exudes incompetence. Cutting and running from Afghanistan was a massive statement of weakness, but there was a competent way to be weak. You could have evacuated the civilians and allies first. You could have destroyed the military equipment so they didn't get their hands on it. They could have held the airbase for a while longer. That would have still been weak, but at least it would have been competent weak. What Joe Biden has told the world over and over again is that he's incomprehensibly weak and stunningly incompetent, not to mention massively corrupt, all at the same time. That combination has opened up the door to evil, and evil is walking right through it.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from BlazeTV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.